All right, we are back with another great black belts and boardroom show. I had a protein shake before I came in here so we could start this. I went outside, I lifted a couple of cars up, flipped those over because that's what a protein shake does for you. Anyone who takes those knows that you can lift anything when you're on a protein shake. But Amir, what's on your mind today?
Renard, I gotta ask you, did you really flip cars, man, with all that protein shake?
It's probably like a little Sienna. About a little Sienna Civic. I lifted one of those up. None of
Did you?
those big vehicles.
Okay, so it was under 2 tons then,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
right?
under 2 tons. Yeah, no problem,
Okay,
no problem.
all right. That's a lot of strength development with just one protein shake. You probably have been doing this over years, my friend. I mean,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. Oh, yeah, years of protein shakes, years of protein shakes.
All right,
So, I tell anybody, get a good one in the morning. It'll change your life.
all right. Well, you know what? This is perfect. I'm so glad you made the example of lifting a car because that's one of the topics on my mind today. Not lifting cars specifically, but personal development. Because you just described an example of years and years of drinking protein shake, training in the dojo, being able to do the thing you just now did. Now, I'm having a hard time picturing you actually lifting a car. So forgive me for your creative license and my believability here, right? So, but the personal development side of it, man. I mean, that is what we do as martial artists. That is what we do as individual contributors or leaders in an organization. We have to build that muscle, and we have to build it in the way craftspeople build it, showing off our work, but learning the skills and doing the work when nobody's watching, man. What do you think about that topic today?
Man, I love that topic. That topic is important in so many ways. If it comes in martial arts, it's a big deal. Like you putting in that repetition, so you can get better. If it's coming from your professional side, doing the stuff that no one sees. If that's having an executive coach, if that's getting in a couple of programs, etc., in order for you to get better because at the end of the day, you're working a job. That's what they expect you to be there for. They expect you to do your 9 to 5, but for you to be seen, and I stress that a lot. For you to be seen, it's that work that no one else gets to see. It's you raising your hand when some new projects come around or maybe with another team. It's you deciding, hey, I'm going to go back to school, get a master's, I'm going to get a PhD, I'm going to get this certification, etc. That personal development, and I think we both can say from what we do in our own personal development, it changes us for the better. It's I'm not, I always say this 100 times, I'm not the same person I was last month and not the same person I was last year. I've totally changed because of that personal development and have become more strategic. So the question comes into, if people expect that when they're working with their leader or their manager that person is going to help them up, the answer to that is that's not the case. It becomes on you. It becomes on you at the end of the day, as far as your personal development and you wanting to grow. Now, your leader, if you, especially if it's a good leader, and I would like to say I'm a good leader for the for the most part. Hopefully, people say that I want to see other people get better and want to see them grow. I want them to be inspired to want to do more. But every so often, you will come across a leader that just want you to come in and do your job and go home and does not look to try to build you up and give you those skills that you need to move to the next. So, yes, it does depend on you and what you want to do in your career.
Yeah. It's there's a few things you said there that resonated with me. One of them is the human capacity for expansion. As a person, and every person is in my mind like this, we want to grow and we want to get better. So coming back to your personal development and leadership example you just now gave, I 100% agree with you. We have to, when we come in to a new company, for example, we might be signing up for a job, but at the end of the day, it's the work that matters, not the job, right? So the job is the entry point. It's how we describe a role in an organization or a requisition. But if the work is not interesting and the work doesn't allow me to grow and expand as a human being, then that work is not going to show my ability to do more and more and grow within the organization. So the way I like to think about it and frame it in my mind, and I also frame this for my teammates, is that you have to work on something, not just come into work and say, this is just a job. But if I, as a leader, am not giving you work that's interesting, that's on me. But if you are not looking at the work and taking it as an opportunity to grow better and do more, that is how you let me as a leader become your voice in spaces where you are not there. And this is how we all, even you and I, Renard, I believe, grow when our leaders are talking about us and saying, hey, look at what Renard did. Look at what Amir did. This is the achievement that his team did. This is the work that they've done. This is the outcome that they've achieved. So this is how I like to look at personal development, is that as the work that I'm doing serving a purpose that I resonate with. I mean, is it any different for you and your team, Renard? I don't think it might be.
No, no. I want to go to a specific part, and then we talking about our teams as us being, leaders. You want to call us player, coach, whatever you want to call us. It's us seeing that spark in somebody. Like you said, they're coming from a 9 to 5. They're coming to work, but it's the ones who actually want to go above and beyond. That you want to see do better in their career. You want to lift them up to where they're trying to go. That's the ones you sit in that one on one and you ask, what do you want to do in the next 5 years? What's your goals? What do you see for yourself? And how can I help you, that small part of your journey get to where you're trying to go? Because I did that in my career. I got to a certain point where I needed to make a change, and this is something I had to have a conversation with myself about, saying, I'm good as an individual contributor, but I want to get better. Everybody had that one time where it just came in, be like, man, I want to get better. I want to do more. I want to go into management. I want to go into leadership. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I might want to segue from being on the service desk, go into networking, etc., whatever that is. And it's that spark that you as a leader of the team sees. Be like, man, I want to help this guy out. And I'll give an example of someone. I won't say their name. I'm not going to do that to them. But I have a person on my team. When I first got out with the company I'm at right now, this was a person who was not seen in some aspects. He didn't do coding, etc. He was a little apprehensive. Now we're talking about 3 years down the line, almost four, and coding genius. He got into coding, and now you just see, I've never seen someone's face light up as much as he does when he comes to coding. He's like, "Man, I just solved this problem." He wound up messaging me one time when he was supposed to be going home. It was after hours. He was like, "Man, I had to stay and work on this." That's the people you gravitate to. Be like, "Man, I want to help this person out." He took something that he was probably at first very apprehensive about, and then all of a sudden figured out how to upskill himself. He didn't ask. He just like, I'm gonna figure it out. And now just seeing him in what he does now, man, I joke around with it. Especially I use Star Wars references all the time. I was like, he was a Padawan, and now he's a Jedi Knight. He's a Jedi Knight now, and that comes from that upskilling yourself and that personal development that you want to do. He worked on his own to figure it out, and now he's just coding like crazy. So that's part of that journey that you love as a leader. But even stepping a little bit back for us, as leaders now. We're leaders. We're seeing other people grow in their career. We're getting to create other leaders, which I love. I know you love. But for you, Amir, what was that spark that said, you know what, I'm going to take some time and do some personal development for myself so I can get better, either as a leader or when you were an IC? What was that day for you? What was that spark for you?
That goes back to high school. I've always been a very competitive person, and I like to compete with myself a lot. try to get better with everything I do. So for me, it was, I'm going to say high school because that's when I decided to jump into technology. Now, I have a little bit of a non-traditional background in the sense that, when I was in high school, the dot-com boom was happening, and I had to decide what my personal development journey was going to be. Was it going to be medical school, which is where I wanted to go, or was it going to be technology, because I was just absolutely fascinated by how software programs were changing the world. So in the mid to late 90s, that's what was going on in Silicon Valley. And while I wasn't in Silicon Valley, I got a lot of information from books and trade journals and things like that. So for me, that was the spark in high school, where I decided technology was where I would go. And I did a lot of reps writing code at night, because we only had one computer in the house. We didn't have multiple computers, and computers were pretty expensive. They were at least $2,000 or more. And back in the 90s, $2,000 was a lot of money, if you remember. So it was always, between my brothers and sisters, I had to find the time when I could have time with the computer and learn how to code. So that was my starting of really becoming a craftsperson and mastering my personal development, or owning my personal development is a better way to put it. How about you? What was the spark for you?
And I laugh because you'll probably laugh at this one. My segue into tech was way different than most. Like you, we only had one computer in the house. Like I said, it shows my age every time. The internet is where you went to and then you left it. So I was always interested in computers, but it probably was when I was in college at first, because I didn't go to college for IT at first, for getting in a computer science degree. I didn't go to college first. I went there to become a physical therapist. I wanted to work with sports teams, etc. I wanted to be the guy traveling, etc. That's what I wanted to do. And I was in that first class of medical terminology, and I was doing terrible in that class. It was terrible. I was failing every single test that you can know of. So I studied super hard for one of them. I mean, I think I studied for like 2 weeks. I finally got a C on one of them, and the teacher came over and he told me, he was like, "Man," he said, "I'm so happy you passed." He said, "But you're gonna fail this class." You say you're
No.
gonna fail this class. He's like, "You're not gonna fail, but I'm so happy you got a C." He said, "Why don't you go drop this class and then come back next year?" He was basically saying, "Hey, I see you're trying, but I'm gonna give you some advice and go drop this class." So I went to drop the class, and then I went straight into tech after that. I was like, "Man, that's pretty much done for me." I went into tech because tech was something I was always around. Like you talk about. If you talk about the '90s, technology was starting to ramp up, online, AOL, all that stuff started coming. So I think every kid around that time was really starting to get into what computers were doing, etc. And so that segued me into tech, into where we are now. But if we talk about even more personal development, there was a change this year for me. That change, getting an executive coach, putting a lot of effort into where I wanted to see myself in my career. And now, the way it's going now, I'm seeing a return on investment of it. It's working. I understand why high level Fortune 500 CEOs, etc., have executive coaches. I understand that now. I understand more about personal development, because I think anyone in their career always gets to a point and wonder what's next. They've been working hard, they're doing all these things, and they be like, "Man, what's next?" And starting to understand what it takes for these other levels, and seeing a change in myself because of personal development. I would suggest that anybody at some point in their career start working on personal development, start working on your branding, start working on your leadership, because you don't have to be an executive in order to be a leader. Start working on that. Understanding and being more strategic on where you're trying to go in your career is part of your personal development. So I would tell anybody, even when you start in your career, the things I wish I knew now conversation, you know, is one of the main things I will tell anybody when it comes to personal development, even starting in a career. understand the power of building relationships and building connections with people.
Yeah. Oh
That's
my
what I
goodness.
tell people.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I want to unpack a little bit what you just now said, Renard, because obviously you and I are individually very hardworking, very competitive by nature. But one of the things that I realized, is you and I are very similar in that we like to stop and reflect on what we're actually doing to become what we want to become. And I think that's really a hallmark of somebody who is very emotionally aware about themselves and about the people they work with and the people around them. But just to come back to what you were saying, one of the things I want to highlight for our listeners is that, personal developments comes in many different shapes and sizes. There's the individual work that we do, and if I think about martial arts, it's the training that I'm doing when I'm not in the dojo. It's the gym work, it's the calisthenics work, and so on. That's me doing the work when my instructor isn't looking at it, right? So the work that I do with my instructor is going to be the work that will benefit me further in my craft, right? So if I take now the enterprise or the corporate lens to it, I might, to the example you gave of a success story, somebody who didn't want to code, but 3 years later is now coding genius. That's the work they did on their own. That's the work that we as leaders have to put in afterwards as a coach to help them grow as an individual. So now we are proud to talk about what they have become, what they've accomplished, the work they've delivered, the outcomes we've gained as a business, and so on. So, you know, if you take that one step further with the coaching analogy of external coaching and the executive coach that you and I have, I think that's all building up to not just personal development, but also personal branding, because I find myself more and more in a world where it's not just about working for the same business. Your personal brand matters a lot, so that personal development needs to also highlight your personal brand. And that's kind of where my mind is going with this discussion also, is what are we doing individually for our personal brand? Because as a team lead, as a leader of many different teams and people, I'm always one to highlight my team. In fact, I take pride in that, put the shine on so and so for the work they did. I want to find as many channels in which I can go yell that. And I know you feel the same way as well, because I've heard you mention that many times in our private conversations. So from that lens, one of the things I want to highlight for our listeners is personal development should add value to your personal brand. And I think what you and I do with this podcast, for instance, is only one example of how we are building our personal brand. But we're also in some ways, or maybe some is under development is minimizing it, in many ways helping others learn from our own personal journey. So what's your thoughts on personal brand plus personal development?
Man, you know what I find funny is that branding is a thing that you have to do in your corporate life now. At one point, that wasn't a thing, but now branding is very important. You want people to know about you before they even get to know you. If that makes sense. They have to know who you are, your background, what's your skills, what's your leadership, your thought leadership, etc. is all part of that. So that personal branding and personal development coincide with each other. What we do on this podcast, like you said, is personal development, personal branding. We get to talk with other people, other great leaders, and it helps us in a way understand, what's going on in the world that's just outside of our circle. So I think that when you're a leader, and especially when you're talking about your team, if we go back to that conversation you were having, that you're sitting there, you're the biggest cheerleader for your team, but also you need to be a cheerleader for yourself, because as a leader, you're advocating and say, "Hey, this is how great the team is." But at the same time, you need to do that for yourself as well, or no one is ever going to know about it. No one will ever know how great you are if you don't tell anybody. You could be the one who led them to so many successful projects, beating what you had on the timeline. But if you don't ever say, "Hey, this is what I have done as a leader in order to develop the team I have, in order for us to get to these projects done," no one will ever know. That means no one will ever look for you to take that next open position as a director, senior director, whatever the next level is for yourself, if you don't advocate for yourself, you have to. There was something I had to learn because I used to think, man, if the team is doing great, everyone's going to know that I'm the one who led them, etc. That is not the case. It's not. It's not. You could be the best leader in the world, but if no one knows about what you're doing and how you're making these OKRs, these KPIs, these projects that you have going on, no one will ever know. So that's another part of your branding. That's just more branding inside the company that you work for. Branding is very important. Advocating for you and your team, making sure that your team is successful, that your team is growing, it shows who you are as a leader. So I think that's a big part of that personal branding, etc. The a lot of stuff that goes on now with your branding, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a big part of your branding. If you are a leader or even an individual contributor, no matter what level you are, and you don't start putting effort in your LinkedIn, that's the first thing people see of you. People outside of your job, they go to your LinkedIn. You know, when you're connecting, when you're in those socials with other leaders or whatever, they go to your LinkedIn. First thing they go to. So if your LinkedIn looks like you're not putting any effort in it, that's what some people start to think. You're not putting any effort into it. So another part of your personal branding, your personal development is working on your LinkedIn, making sure it's up. Your picture looks great, you know, etc. All these are a part of it, and you think that at first it is a very difficult thing to be attached to all this personal branding, but eventually you will create what I like to call the machine. And then every so often, you just keep feeding the machine, and the machine will do the work for you that you're looking for and what you're trying to achieve in your career and your personal development.
Yeah. You know, I feel very fortunate that I work at a company where there is something like, an internal channel where we can talk about things and successes. And I encourage my team to use that as well. So I think there is a component of internal eminence and external eminence. If I think about personal branding, it can happen both, or should happen both internally and externally. And internally, it'll look a little different. But to your point about LinkedIn and external eminence, it's not just a social media. It's about how do you leverage the channel in order to build awareness about yourself, about the work you're doing, about your thoughts. It's not just what did I do on the weekend? That's more Facebook territory or Instagram. It's really about presenting yourself as somebody who is not just a contributor to the work you're doing in your company, the great work you're doing, but it's also how you are showing up for others. And we do that internally all the time. Some team needs some help. What do we do? Oh, yeah, schedule a meeting. Oh, yeah, we'll just go, edit this document or whatever. So we show up for others internally all the time. But showing up for others externally, to your point, comes back to something like LinkedIn. How am I helping others? Whether it's a GitHub community and I'm doing it there as an engineer, it's also with thought leadership that you can share with others because they may not be aware what you take for granted. I might think I know something about leadership and it comes natural to me, but unless you share it with others, nobody else is going to benefit from that.
I agree with that. I agree, man. So much goes into your personal development. I think that when it comes to it, be strategic. I think we talked about that earlier. Being strategic about your personal development and take bits of it day by day. Like if you say like, hey, the first 3 years I'm trying to get to X, next 3 years I'm trying to get to X. Do that and just segment it, and then you start developing. I know this is what I did in my career. I started going throughout my career and then started seeing where I wanted to go. You know, I talked about this previously and I think everybody does when they get out of college, they just need a job. You get the job and then you start developing like, okay, I might want to go, might want to take this path. And then that personal development comes in. And I think that if you're a person who's trying to strive to become a great leader, personal development is part of that. When you get a job, they're hiring you for what's on your job description. The personal development and everything, that's outside of that. Like you said, that's the part where no one sees or people just hear about what you're doing. That's how you get to start moving up in your career after that. That's when those open positions come up and your name is talked about in rooms that you're not a part of because you're putting the effort. People see that. I know from my experience, people have seen the difference in me, the way I talk in meetings, etc., the way I, once again, that executive swagger became a form of something that I have, and it just changes after that. I was not the person I am today when I started, but it's developing over time, and I think people need to take that in far as your career and what you want to do for it. Don't think of it as, hey, I got a job, this is what I'm going to do. Think of what's the next step after that. What legacy are you trying to leave from a professional level that you're trying to leave when you retire? Mine for me is I just want to become and continue to be a great leader and build other leaders. I've said that before. That is the legacy that I want to leave when it comes to personal development, and my legacy is just build other leaders, create other great leaders no matter what company they're part of, and that's part of that personal development. If I can see someone on my team who, like we talked about earlier, didn't do code at all and all of a sudden now he's a coding genius, that's me helping that person with their personal development. That's them taking pride in what they're doing in their career. So for our listeners, think about that over time. Think about what you want your career to be, whatever industry that is. You could be a musician. When you're a musician, you want to get better. You're taking personal development in that. So I would definitely say keep pushing the needle. Keep moving that forward and become better in your craft. We go back to being a craftsman in martial arts is the same thing in your personal development. Be a craftsman. Be a craftsman at the end of the day.
Yeah. You know, I it's so we go back to sports, you and I,
Mhm.
and we look at team sports, for example. There is the statistics that go with each team sport. Pick your favorite team. There's going to be numbers that you could keep talking about all day, all year long. But within those statistics, there's individual statistics. So if I think about the football team or basketball team, you know who their superstars are because you'll look at their stats and you'll say, "Wow, this is an awesome player. Look at what they've achieved in the last year, 2 years, 10 years and so on." Or maybe they're Hall of Fame material. But you look at those individual stats. So I think professional sports or even college sports have the benefit of having individual stats and team stats. So you can compare yourself to the team and you can compare yourself to yourself. But in the workplace, for instance, there is no equivalent of team stats or personal stats. So I think this is where personal development plus personal branding will help personal eminence, both internally and externally. So I come back to the work that we do in our when we're in our own space versus when we're out there collaborating, it becomes so much more important. And team, I'm a firm believer in team. You can't get anything done on your own, and if you believe that, I think there's a little bit of hallucination going on there. But you can definitely achieve a lot as a team. So for me, it's also a conversation about what you're doing to build your external eminence just as much as it is your internal eminence. Because ultimately, we do want people moving from our organization into other parts of the business because this is how the business will get better. And the business culture is because of the people. The business culture externally is because of the people. Who are the decision makers within it? And as leaders, you and I know this very well. It is our responsibility to help people grow and help their eminence grow as well.
Man, I'm gonna leave this for our black belt and boardroom listeners. Jordan did not win any championships until he got a team.
Yeah.
That's what I just took from that. Jordan did not win any championships until he got a team around him. He was a great player, could score 60 points on his own, but couldn't win a championship until he got Pippen and everybody else. So if you're talking about team, that is what I took from that. And I think that our listeners today will definitely take some aspects from this. And I'm gonna leave this last thing before we close out. Always get better. Know that, like we say in the dojo, and what I say when I get on the mats, I'm always better than the day before. Every time I step on the mats, I want to be better than the day before. And that takes repetition. That takes focusing on that personal branding. Same thing when we're in martial arts. That takes repetition. That's doing the moves when no one else is seeing in order for us to get better. So be a craftsman, work on that repetition, work on your personal development, and you will see the return on investment when you do that. So, for our Black Belts and Boardrooms listeners, we will see you on the next one.